What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 458 of Hashtag AskGSM. Here today for Wednesday, September 7th, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. I thought the excitement of the wrestling weekend would end on Monday after Raw and after Clash of the Castle, Worlds Collide, and All Out and whatever. But, I don't know if excitement is the right word, but there's still a lot going on stemming from the events of the post-show media scrum coming off of All Out on Sunday night. We're bound to find out either soon by the time this video goes up, or this afternoon, or tonight by Dynamite, whatever, what the ramifications of that post-press conference will be, involving CM Punk and the Elite and Ace Steel and the biting. It has been a fucking wild 72 hours in the world of wrestling from that alone. And we already had a great weekend. I thought All Out was a great show. I thought Worlds Collide was a very good show. I thought Clash of the Castle was an excellent show. So we have a lot to get to here today. If you want me to answer your question here on the show, please be sure to send in a question by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. Last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. First one coming in from Micah Does It from YouTube. Their first question was, should Roman Reigns main event both nights of WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns on night 1 and The Rock versus Roman Reigns on night 2? Now, I was thinking about this the other day because I want more. Honestly, if you had to make me choose, do I want The Rock versus Roman more or Cody versus Roman more? Probably Cody versus Roman. So there is the option if The Rock is available, and I don't think he will be. I know they keep talking about it. Triple H mentioned it in the interview with Ariel Helwani on Friday. About it's kind of in the ball's in The Rock's court. When he's free, we'll use him. But he hasn't been free for anything involving like a match in close to 10 years. The last time Rock was available for a full-on match by next spring will have been a decade since the last match with John Cena. Now, I know he came in for that one-off against Eric Rowan at WrestleMania 32. It was an impromptu match. I don't count that. He's done a couple of appearances over the years, but that was at WrestleMania 32. Even that was 7 years ago by next year. I don't think he was involved with WWE at all after that, on air, until I think the SmackDown moved to Fox in October of 2019. Then, of course, the pandemic happened, and he hasn't been back since. And I know he's a busy dude and whatever, but as I've said before, if he really, really wants to make this happen, he will prioritize the WWE stuff over the movies. Now, I know he was a lot less busy 10 years ago when he came in for this stuff with John Cena and CM Punk in the early 2010s. I understand that, but if he really is talking this big game about facing Roman Reigns, and, he's mentioned many times before it's something he wants to do, and it does seem like, listening to his comments, just hearing it and not just reading them, it does genuinely seem like something he does want to do. It's more a matter of him prioritizing that stuff over the acting, if only for a couple of months. He's not going to be on Raw every week. He won't be on Raw as often as he was back in 2013, leading into WrestleMania 29. But if he can make at least 1 or 2 appearances a month, in January, February, March, and then right before WrestleMania in April, I think that would work. And the other times when he's not on the show, you can have Roman speak or have him cut a promo and film it and send it in like he did 10 years ago, via satellite as the joke goes. I think that could work. But he just has to prioritize the wrestling stuff over the acting. That's really the bottom line here. Could you do, if you had The Rock available, I really do not want to see The Rock beat Roman Reigns for the championship. I don't think he does. I think Rock comes back for a one-off, he loses, and goes away. Rock beating Roman and then going away would be incredibly fucking dumb. The Rock ending Roman Reigns' near 3-year run at that point as champion, and then, I think that'd be incredibly stupid. I really do. I think The Rock beating Roman would be dumb. I don't know if he would even want to do that anyway. We have Triple H in power now. I'm not sure if Triple H would do that. I think that'd be stupid. So you have Roman beat Rock. But, could you do Cody and Roman main event night 1 for the championship, and then Roman faces the winner or Roman Reigns regardless on night 2? Yeah, that could work. That could work. I don't love the idea because I do feel like the focus heading into WrestleMania should solely be on Cody Rhodes. I still am, at the end of the day, gun to head, what am I choosing? Is The Rock coming back or not? I don't think he is. We were already in this position in 2021, 2022, now going into 2023. He hasn't made a single appearance on TV. He couldn't even come in to do the fucking Survivor Series shit last year for the grand 25th anniversary of The Rock. So if he can't even do that, for a one-off no less, not even sending a video, and I wasn't against The Rock as much as other people were for that show, and I thought it was pretty dumb they couldn't make that happen, then what does that tell you about WrestleMania? So he's had a lot of time to plan this out and map it out and kind of figure out his schedule come the spring. I still don't think it's happening. Could a night one, night two deal work with Cody and Roman and Rock? Yeah, that could work. I would rather see Roman and Rock or Roman and Cody for one night and then have that be it and then have night two go to the women. I don't know if Roman main eventing 2 nights in a row is fair, even though he is the biggest star in the company. Could you do Roman and Rock at Mania, then save Cody and Roman for SummerSlam? Yeah, but then that means Roman's going to retain, and then Cody should not... Whenever Roman loses that championship at this point, it can't be on anything but a big show. So you can't really have Cody Rhodes win it at a Extreme Rules or a WrestleMania Backlash or even Money in the Bank. To me, it's got to be... Clash at the Castle was an option. They didn't do that, which is fine, because I want Cody to win it. Either a pay-per-view like that, SummerSlam, or WrestleMania. Not even Survivor Series or Money in the Bank or the Royal Rumble. It has to be one of those three. And if you do that, then we're going out another year of Roman Reigns as champion. Now, there are plenty of opponents for him to face, I think, if you really stretch it out. The problem is Roman's part-time schedule. If this was 6 months ago, I would tell you, honestly, keep the belt on him for another year. The problem is that he has been champion for so long, and he's already now a part-time, to the point now where he's a part-time performer. He's not going to be around for the Extreme Rules pay-per-views, or probably day one, I'm not sure. But, the Elimination Chambers and maybe the Saudi shows. But what about Money in the Bank? And what about WrestleMania Backlash? We need a world champion. At the very least, they need to split the titles, which I feel like at this point, I was thinking about this yesterday, they're not going to do it until he loses, the Undisputed Championship. And at that point, they might split them up. Until then, probably not. And I hate to suggest that because we need 2 championships right now. His second question: do you think that if in 2020, if we did not see Drew McIntyre win the Royal Rumble and win the title from Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 36, would it have been a great story for McIntyre to win it in his home country? He's not from Wales, against Roman Reigns. Would the fans have wanted to see him win if that would have been the case? Fans wanted to see him win regardless. It would have been a great moment. I honestly preferred Roman retaining because I love Drew, and it would have been a great moment for him. But I do feel like whoever beats Roman Reigns should benefit. Drew would have benefited. He's at a level, but not the Roman Reigns level, so he would have elevated to that point. Cody has never been world champion before. I honestly feel like whoever beats Roman should be solidified as a main eventer. Drew already is. He hasn't been champion in almost 2 years, and he still feels like a genuine main eventer on the SmackDown, Raw brand, whatever show he might be on at any given point. He still feels like a made man. Cody Rhodes kind of was before he got hurt, but he needs that world title to really solidify his legacy, complete his story, and I do think beating Roman Reigns would accomplish that. If not him, I suggested yesterday Braun Breaker. That would really make him a made man. The problem with Braun Breaker is that he's not remotely ready for that spot. I did make that suggestion months ago. Further thought has allowed me to change my mind, and I don't think he should be the one beating Roman Reigns, at least not anytime soon. Maybe if we're talking WrestleMania, I don't even know if WrestleMania 39 would be smart. I feel like strapping the rocket to him that quickly, yeah, it could be like Brock Lesnar winning the championship within a matter of months, but even Braun Breaker is not Brock Lesnar. I would not do that. Maybe by WrestleMania 40, I don't know about WrestleMania 39. That's in 6 months. He's still in NXT. He's not quite there yet, and he's still NXT champion anyway. You could have him win the Rumble, drop the NXT title in the next couple of months, win the Royal Rumble, and then go on to WrestleMania, but I do think that spot should be reserved for Cody, unless Cody can't make it back for whatever reason. But anyway, to answer your original question about Drew, yeah, my mind probably would have been changed. If Drew did not win the Rumble a couple of years ago, and he never had, he had a moment, but it wasn't really a moment because it was in front of no fans. But if he had never before been a world champion, absolutely I would have said he should have won a Clash of the Castle. The only reason why I was fine with it, a few reasons. One, Solo Sikoa debuted, so it wasn't like Roman just cheated and won or won clean. That would have been bad, I think. That would have been really lame. Drew's already had a world championship twice. He's already kind of had his moment, albeit not in front of fans, but he's already had that grand WrestleMania moment as champion again. Not exactly a grand WrestleMania moment in front of no fans at the Performance Center, but he's already been a WWE champion twice, and those do count. I mean, he was champion for fucking 6 months the first time, and the second time like 3 months, so he was champion for a pretty good period of time. That being said, if he had not won those championships, then yeah, I probably would have absolutely pulled for him more to beat Roman Reigns at Clash of the Castle to become champion, but that wasn't the case, so I'm fine with him losing. Micah does its third question here. Also, what do you think of Naomi coming back as a heel and challenging Liv Morgan for the SmackDown Women's Championship, defeating her and taking the title to the Bloodline? That could work. I'm still skeptical of Naomi as a heel. The only time we really saw her as a heel was in, was it Team Bad? With Sasha and Tamina. It worked well. I always felt like she was a better babyface. She was a more natural babyface. She's very likable and, energetic and whatever. I do want to see her in the Bloodline. I think that'd be cool, and it makes sense because she is married to Jimmy Uso, so logically it would make sense. She does not interact with him really at all, which is weird. But, I would like to see it. It's not necessary. I do get the feeling, and what I would probably do, the last time we saw her on TV was with Sasha Banks as the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. For them to come back and say what you will about the tag team titles, but if they were so gung-ho about the titles as they claimed to be before they walked out in May, why would they come back and do anything else but challenge for those championships? So that's the problem. I do think Sasha and Naomi are coming back to challenge for those titles at some point. Beyond that, once they get their reign, they split up. I think Sasha's a far better heel than Naomi. She should be heel more than Naomi. But if you want to have Naomi flip the switch instead of Sasha, who's already turned on her opponents many times before, she's turned heel 2 or 3 times already. If you really want to switch it up, then yeah, have Naomi be the one to turn on Sasha, and then she joins the Bloodline. That would be very interesting. And we can get a full-on Naomi-Sasha feud, which we've never really had in WWE before. They've had matches on Raw. They've had several matches against each other, but never really a full-on feud, I don't think so. At least with one-on-one with each other, so I would love to see it. His next question, should Solo Sikoa be the one to defeat Roman Reigns? He is going to be in WWE for the next decade. What do you think? It's certainly not a bad option. The idea that I've always pitched is that Roman Reigns loses. Not always, dating back to 2020. Cody was in AEW at that point. But for the last couple of months, what I've been thinking is this. Roman loses the championship, not to Solo. I feel like, because to have him turn on Roman anytime soon would be silly. Solo could be the babyface, I get it, but I don't really want to see Solo be the one. I don't even think if Braun Breaker's not ready, Solo Sikoa is certainly not ready. He's ready to be on the main roster, no doubt, but he's not ready to be carrying the company as the world champion. Not even Braun Breaker's ready for that, so I would not, even if it was WrestleMania 40. And that's another year and a half of Roman as champion. So I wouldn't do that personally. But what I would do is this. You have Roman lose the championship to Cody Rhodes next year at WrestleMania. Roman's on a part-time schedule anyway, so he's not going to be on every Raw from that point forward. He's not going to be at WrestleMania Backlash, I would assume. He's only working select dates. Okay, so you don't do the turn immediately, but you kind of do that classic storyline trope where after a long, and they just did this in MLW with Jacob Fatu as the MLW World Heavyweight Champion, after a long, dominant heel world title run, Roman Reigns really has nothing left to do as a heel. They did this with CM Punk as well, not right after he lost the world championship, but a couple months later. You turn him face. And it doesn't have to be, the believe that, the Shield music Roman Reigns, but it can be current Roman Reigns just being betrayed by the Bloodline. And Roman loses his spot at the head of the table. Kind of like what we saw with Judgment Day, but this would make more sense. And instead of Finn Balor taking Edge's spot, it's Solo Sikoa taking Roman's spot in the Bloodline. Because he is a member of the Bloodline. They kind of look to him as the future. Roman failed us. He said he wouldn't lose to Cody, and he did. And again, you don't have to do it immediately. But over the course of this could be like a 2-year story. Solo and the Usos turn on Roman. I don't think Jon Moxley will ever be back in WWE, especially not anytime soon. But I think it would be cool if you had a story where it was the Usos and Solo versus Roman and the man who, granted, turned on him, but still an old running mate in Seth Rollins. And you can have Roman and Seth versus the Usos. I feel like that would be incredible. If Jon Moxley was back by then the Shield versus Solo and the Usos. That would be what fantasy booking, the definition of fantasy booking, what dreams are made of. That will never happen, just an idea. But Roman has been a heel, not for so long, but because he's been such a dominant world champion for so long, what more can you really do with him as a heel beyond the championship picture? I don't want to see him losing it and then getting it back. I mean, who else is there really for him to feud with as a heel? I mean, there are a few people right now, obviously, but if he's not champion, I don't know. I just feel like it would make more sense for him to be like a tweener, and then you can move someone else into that top heel spot in either brand. So that's long-term booking. I would not have Solo be the one to beat Roman Reigns for the title. Could you have Solo beat Roman down the road? Absolutely. That could be the WrestleMania 40, maybe not main event, but like a headlining match, if not at SummerSlam next year. So that's how I would book it. And I think that'd be really cool. No L from Facebook, their first question was, given everything that happened after All Out, is it time for MJF to become AEW World Champion? So I'll talk more about the CM Punk stuff in a moment. Obviously, a lot of you sent in questions about it, and that's going to be the main talking point for this episode. I'll probably go into more depth tomorrow. The problem is that we still don't know, as of this recording, and maybe the news already broke by the time I'm done recording here, of what the future holds for Punk and the Elite and what the suspensions look like, who's getting suspended, who's getting fired. Is nothing happening, which I would doubt. There has to be repercussions. I'll talk more about that tomorrow on WrestleRant Radio with RJ. Everything else, as far as my, not fresh reaction, because this happened on Sunday, but as far as everything going on in the last 72 hours, I'll talk about piece by piece in a moment as we answer your questions. The MJF aspect of this, as far as that goes, yes, I do think he should be world champion. Not because of Punk being, unprofessional and the post-show media conference, whatever. No, I don't think the original plan was for Punk to beat MJF, and then you just move on. No, I've said for years now, MJF should be world champion. I mean, the fact that he hasn't held a single title so far and the fucking ring doesn't count is a crime. I honestly thought he should have been the one to beat Adam Page for the championship back at Double or Nothing. They had other plans. They did MJF and Wardlow. Cool, MJF lost to Wardlow, and they completely squandered any momentum Wardlow had by completely just having him flounder as TNT champion. That's another discussion for another day. As far as MJF goes, even before the Punk stuff happened, as soon as that show went off the air and I hadn't even watched the presser yet, I thought to myself, MJF should beat Punk for that championship. What I was thinking, I mean, obviously it all hinders on the suspensions and the departures and whatever. If fucking Punk leaves or he gets fired or something, I'm not saying, keep him around for the sake of the storyline. No, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, that would just be a shitty situation. I mean, this title was already vacated, not vacated, but they already had a fucking interim champion. You've had a million tournaments lately. I do not want another interim champion or another tournament to become world champion. No, just give someone the championship or just have a match on Wednesday to determine the champion next week or whatever. As far as MJF goes, though, he should be champion. Absolutely. And that just makes sense given the story they're telling. Now, again, it all hinders on the Punk status, what his status is for Grand Slam in a couple of weeks. But what I think they should do, and I was thinking about this yesterday, if Punk's around for Grand Slam, which I'm not even sure he will be at this point. I'm not even sure when it is. Is it in 2 weeks? I don't remember. Maybe he'll suspend him for 2 weeks. I mean, Eddie Kingston reportedly got suspended for 2 weeks, and he did a lot less than fucking CM Punk did. So, I mean, Punk should probably be suspended for a lot longer than that if we're being honest here. I know he's a top guy, but you can't play double standards here. And I'm not really sure that would send the greatest message to the locker room if they did that. But assuming he's at Grand Slam, I would have Punk beat MJF. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but what I would do is this. Do the double turn. I mean, you could have MJF win in New York, and that would be a great reaction. Maybe Punk attacks him afterward. Either way, even regardless of the Punk press conference thing, I would turn Punk heel. And Jericho even alluded to this in his post-show media conference, in his post-show press conference, that he even told MJF, "You're going to be a babyface when you come back." And MJF told him, "I don't want to be a babyface," and he's going to fight it. But Jericho said, "No, just let it happen. People want to cheer you." And he is a fucking asshole. He's a dick and whatever. He wouldn't have to start kissing babies and hugging fat girls and shit and whatever. That's a line to quote Batista. I'm not fat shaming here. He wouldn't have to start doing any of that sort of stuff. But just be the character that he is, just facing heels. And I think people would cheer him. And you can tell the story that he's really defending AEW from Punk. Kind of what Hangman Adam Page alluded to earlier this year, but now, like, for real. At that time, it didn't really make a lot of sense because that wasn't really the story they were telling, because they were both baby faces. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now it would. I mean, Punk's actions legitimately could cost the company a lot of goodwill. They could cost them a lot of money, losing one of their top stars, putting the shows in jeopardy, and all this other sort of stuff. So it is kind of a case of MJF defending AEW from CM Punk. And MJF should absolutely, regardless of when it happens, regardless of whether it's at Full Gear or Full Gear or Grand Slam or whatever, MJF should beat CM Punk for that championship. You could have Punk win, turn him heel in the process, people would boo the fuck out of him in New York, or you can have MJF win in 2 or 3 weeks and then turn Punk heel afterward or the next week or whatever. I do think it would get the maximum amount of heat in New York, though. MJF's kind of backyard. He's from Long Island, but New York is New York, whatever. So, anyway, that's what I would do, but at the same time, though, we don't know what's going to happen to Punk. So all of this might be irrelevant. I do think the end game, regardless of whether it's soon or at Full Gear, it can't be much longer than that. I mean, you can maybe drag this out until Revolution or Double or Nothing. The end game should be MJF as world champion. No doubt about it. I mean, the guy should have already been world champion already. But better late than never. You know, it's better than him leaving the company, never becoming world champion. So, regardless of whether he resigns or not, they should give him a run, and that would honestly probably encourage him to stick around if he's being booked correctly. And not to say he wasn't booked correctly before, but he should have been world champion a while ago. Their second question, thoughts on Triple H saying congrats on beating our developmental wrestling, aka NXT, about AEW they're talking about. I heard that, I laughed, but it is a dumb thing to say. As a lot of people said, I completely agree with the general consensus. Yeah, it is developmental, but it wasn't developmental according to Triple H himself 3 years ago. I mean, everyone and their fucking mother he was doing interviews with telling them it's a third brand, it's insulting to call it developmental. Okay, I mean, that's what you said. I mean, we're still having developmental aspects on the brand. Yeah, it's airing for 2 hours on USA Network. It really is kind of a third brand at this point, but now all of a sudden it's developmental. Yeah, it's developmental now on USA Network, what it feels like, even though it's still on USA for 2 hours. So is it a third brand? Is it developmental? What the fuck is it? It is developmental, but at the time when they were going head-to-head with AEW, it wasn't developmental. So it really is the classic case of WWE, specifically Triple H, who I like a lot, changing the narrative to fit their own narrative, to make themselves look like they're better than AEW, and they didn't really beat anything impressive. Yeah, they didn't get high of ratings as Raw or SmackDown. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But they did beat WWE's show, their next biggest show beyond Raw and SmackDown. I mean, they were obviously getting more viewership than fucking 205 Live or NXT UK. But to beat NXT, a brand at that point that was super hot, and that a lot of people were excited to see go live on Tuesdays and whatever, was an impressive feat, no doubt about it, or on Wednesdays at that point. So, to say, oh, you just beat our developmental program, and that's just Triple H just being fucking petty. I mean, this is the same guy that made that pissant company comment a couple of years ago at the Hall of Fame, and it was stupid then. It was, don't get me wrong, like I said, I laughed. It was funny, but at the same time, it's like, all right, it's just not true, and it's a dumb thing to say, and it's kind of like, oh, it's a joke, you should laugh, but if you were offended, you're a baby. But if the roles were reversed, then it's like, oh, woe is me. That's why that whole thing is dumb, but, yeah, no, it's just what he said was comical. I'll just put it that way. At Boss Antelope 86, what are your thoughts on the CM Punk situation, and what punishment do you think he should get? I mean, here we go. A lot of you guys asked about this, and we'll get into the meat of it here. I watched the full press conference. I watched the full press conference multiple times. I rewatched it again late last night at midnight with fucking Junior Mints, because I was fascinated to rewatch this whole thing. It is certainly interesting. It was definitely history in the making. Watching it even for the first time, not live, but when I saw comments in my timeline on Twitter saying, oh, Punk said this, I went back and watched the whole thing. I watched the AEW one first, but you really need to get a full glimpse of what this scrum, like how it started. Because when the scrum starts on the AEW channel, it kind of cuts off like the first portion of it from Punk in his back and forth with Nick Hausman of WrestlingInc.com. That was really what set Punk off. It wasn't Nick's fault. He didn't even ask about Cabana. He didn't say anything. Punk, Nick had a question, and maybe he was going to ask about Cabana. Who the fuck knows? Because he has asked about Punk or Cabana a lot, not to Punk, but to Tony Khan quite a bit over the last probably year or so. since he arrived in AEW in these like post-show media conferences and whatever. But anyway, before Nick could even ask a question, Punk kind of not went off on him, but, singled him out, knew he did stand up with Colt Cabana, Scott Colton, as he called him his real name. And even Nick said he's not friends with him anymore. He doesn't see eye to eye with Colt. And I don't think Nick even reports the news. I mean, he just kind of asks the questions. He's not Sean Ross Sapp. He's not Mike Johnson. He's not breaking exclusives. He has a very good idea of what's going on inside the business from what I understand, but it's not like he's breaking news for Wrestling Inc. Raj Giri is from Wrestling Inc. I'm not sure if those two are, they're linked because they work for the same site, but I'm not sure if Nick Hausman's getting exclusives, getting scoops, and then giving them to Raj. I have no fucking clue. It doesn't even really matter. The point of the matter is this. Punk went off on his own accord. I'm not saying he should not have addressed the Colt Cabana stuff because it's been asked about so many times. It's been such a sensitive topic lately with the AEW, officials and whatever, specifically Tony Khan getting asked about it. The funny thing is that we're not arguing, but this whole thing is about a guy that's not even on the fucking show. I mean, it's not like Colt Cabana did something like heinous or he was involved in speaking out, which I don't think he was, and now he's on TV being pushed as the world champion. I mean, this is a guy that has not been on the show in fucking like 6 months. I'm not even sure. Was he at Death Before Dishonor? I don't even remember. I wasn't there in time for the pre-show. I think he was. But he has not been on AEW programming in like 6 fucking months. And that's because around the time his contract expired, they just reassigned him to Ring of Honor. Now, Punk made sure to say during that press conference, you can believe what you want. I believe him when he says, I don't give a fuck where he works. I wouldn't tell Tony Khan to tell him to put him in Ring of Honor or whatever. I don't think Punk would have done that. That's not to say, though, that was not something going through TK's mind when he made the decision to put Colt Cabana in Ring of Honor. Tony Khan might have been thinking, and he hasn't explained this, and he probably wouldn't say this publicly, probably nor should he, because it makes kind of creates this issue within his company and his stars and his talent and whatever. He can express this to Colt Cabana. I mean, it's not fair to him. Not that Colt would be a world champion on Dynamite right now anyway, but they weren't doing shit with them. And the thing with the Colt and Punk thing, I will say this real quick. If they were rushing to get Colt away from Punk, why would they be on the same show? I mean, there were episodes of Dynamite where Colt was on Dynamite and Punk was wrestling later in the show or earlier in the show or whatever. I mean, they shared the same, maybe not the same locker room. Punk probably has his own locker room. That was made pretty clear by the comments, by what came out after the All Out press conference. But they were in the same company, and they shared the same air, essentially, maybe not interacting, for a good 6 months before Colt Cabana was taken away from the AEW television show. So it's not as if Punk showed up in August of last year, and then all of a sudden Colt Cabana disappears from the show. I mean, yeah, there is truth to the fact, probably, that he was reassigned to keep him away from Punk, but it's not as if Colt was in the midst of this great push anyway. I don't think Colt should have been fired. I do think he has a lot of value to Ring of Honor. Not fired, but having his contract not renewed. I think that would have sucked. And that was the original thought process, apparently, and people stuck up for him and whatever. But it's not as if Punk showed up and then Colt immediately disappeared. I mean, he was barely on the show to begin with, and he still appeared on the shows, and he still appeared on Dark and Elevation and whatever, doing his thing. So I don't really believe the fact, Punk told TK to take him off the show. No, I don't believe that for a second. Punk got frustrated at all the reports coming out, believing, and this is not confirmed, that the Bucks and Omega went to, Sean Ross Sapp said on Twitter, and again, you could take anyone for their word, and I believe that this is true, that he did not hear about the Colt report from the Bucks or Omega, which is important to note, because Punk kind of made it sound like the people breaking this story about Colt Cabana were the Bucks and Omega themselves. Now, whoever Sean Ross Sapp got the report from, could that have been from the Bucks and Omega originally, and they told someone else to tell Sean? I mean, that's very possible too. Punk is of the impression that the Bucks and Omega specifically, and probably Paige, who's friends with Colt from the Dark Order for several years now, they have history, they're all friends, the Bucks and Omega, they all like Colt, they were the ones that started that rumor, and Punk was not too happy about it. He should have addressed it quickly. I mean, his comments were fucking funny. And if that was true, then he's right. If it's not true, then he probably shouldn't be assuming that they were doing that. I mean, does he have proof that they did that? Like, I know you don't exactly need proof to know what's going on. I'm not calling him dumb, but the whole thing to me is just fascinating. At the very least, it could have said, there's bullshit being spread about me, and, Not that he couldn't have gotten some color with his language, but he said fuck like every 2 seconds during that press conference on Sunday. I mean, he knew kids were in the room, too. You look around, and he looked around the room quite a bit, looking for Alvarez and looking for Nick Hausman and fucking Meltzer and all these other people. I mean, that kid AJ Awesome is probably no more than 10 or 12 years old. And he knows fucking Izzy is there, too. I can't imagine she's more than 15, 16 years old at this point. I mean, he even talked to her at one point. I mean, really, is that really necessary to be going off on the tirade that he did, making everyone uncomfortable for really no reason at all when no one even asked about it? If someone asked about it, I kind of get it. But he went off about the Scott Colton thing for like a good 10 minutes, and he kept going back to it, too. And he went off on Paige, and he went off on Omega. There was a way to address that. I'm not saying completely ignore it, but there was a way to address it that was more professional than what he did. If what he said is true, then he has every right to address it, because they should not be doing that either. I don't think Paige is completely innocent in this. I don't think the Elite are completely innocent in this. There are ways for this to be settled backstage. And it was kind of settled backstage after the fact when reportedly the Bucks confronted Punk in his locker room. I heard one source say that they busted down the door. I mean, I don't know about that. It's the fucking Young Bucks. But, they got into a fight. Nick walked away with a black eye because a chair was thrown his way. Ace Steel, Punk's friend who was on Dynamite last week, was reportedly, biting and pulling the hair of Kenny Omega. I mean, what the fuck is going on over there right now? I mean, that shit is embarrassing. I like Punk, but that is just fucking embarrassing. Regardless of who threw the first punch. I mean, everyone's at fault for even engaging in it. They could have just worked this out like adults, and they didn't. And even Tony Khan's in the fault here because he did nothing. Punk went off that whole fucking scrum, and I would advise you to go ahead and not just watch the scrum from AEW's channel. But Denise Salcedo put up her full point of view from where she was sitting, which was front row, over on the left if you're watching Punk and Tony Khan at the table. Clear as day audio. A great shot. Much better than the AEW audio that had weird, like a bass to it, to their voices, and you can't hear what the reporters are saying. And it's also full length, too. So I would implore you to go check that one out. But, yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear Punk went off the handle, completely unnecessary, and Tony Khan did nothing. He just sat there and just nodded his head and acting all fucking awkward. And, I mean, I was at the post-show press conference for Death Before Dishonor. That was pretty uneventful. He didn't really say a lot of note, but he wasn't weird in that one. He was very talkative. He kept there until, he kept us there until like 1 o'clock in the morning, which was ridiculous. I mean, to have a post-show media conference go 90 minutes with fucking, they had some stars there. They had FTR and they had Claudio and a few others, but, I mean, Tony Khan was answering questions about really nothing for about 90 minutes, which was dumb. But anyway, yeah, I just think he should have stepped in at a certain point and said, all right, Punk. Not be like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, you could have said, all right, okay, moving on. And he attempted to at one point, but then Punk talked over him. You would never see that in WWE. It's not a WWE versus AEW thing. It's a just common sense thing. I mean, you just step in and say, listen, cool it. On to the next question. Let's talk about this after the fact if you really want to discuss this and you're all heated about it. I mean, the guy just fucking won the world title and he was all bent out of shape, so I don't know, man. The whole thing's a fucking mess. And as far as what should happen to Punk was your question, what punishment should he get? I don't know about firing. I'm not saying they shouldn't fire him. We don't know all the details. We don't know what's true. We don't know what's not true. I read this morning that they're bringing in an external party, a third party, to investigate, which is good. I'm not sure how many answers you're going to get out of these people. I mean, one's just going to point the finger of blame at the other. Just going to point the blame at the other person or the other people or whatever. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. I assume we'll find out by the end of today. That was what the report indicated from, I think it was either Meltzer or Fightful, that we'll have a good idea of what's going on next with Punk and the Elite and everyone else. Because I saw Ace Steel is obviously gone. I mean, listen, even if he's a good producer, he is not worth keeping around. I mean, biting a fucking EVP is just ridiculous. That was just stupid. First of all, I think the Bucks and Omega should not be EVPs. If you're an active talent on the show, that was a bad idea from the get-go. It was eventually going to spill over into something bad. That's exactly what happened this weekend and just the last couple of weeks. I don't think they're saints in this thing either. Even though they haven't addressed it publicly, they don't have to. I mean, a lot of these things seem credible that Punk was saying. I don't disagree with a lot of what Punk said. He probably just shouldn't. He should not have gone off the way that he did. That shit was embarrassing. What the Elite allegedly did was also embarrassing too. they should no longer be EVPs. I wouldn't get rid of any of those people. I would get rid of a steal. I mean, to fucking bite someone is ridiculous. If Punk threw a chair, it was reportedly a steal, but if it was Punk, I mean, they should probably all be suspended, in my opinion. Punk maybe even longer, because he was the one in the press show conference going off unprofessionally about it. And if he threw the first punch, I mean, he should absolutely be the one to be suspended longer than the Elite. But I think they should all be off the show for a little while. I don't care if he's the world champion. I don't care if they're the trios champions. I mean, fuck it. I mean, if you want to take the belt off of him, whatever. No more tournaments, please. I'm done with that shit. Just put the fucking belt on someone else, on MJF or whoever, or just decide it on next week's Dynamite or do it at Grand Slam. I can see a scenario where if they don't do Punk and MJF at Grand Slam because Punk won't be there, I mean, I would take him off the show for a month or two, to be honest. I know he was already gone for a few months due to the injury, but he just can't get away with that. I mean, that shit is fucking terrible. What sort of message does that send if someone of a star of his caliber is not really suffering any consequences for his actions? Tony Khan's got to grow a set and fucking put his foot down and get his shop, get his house in order. I mean, the amount of rumors that have come out about this whole thing, and some people are saying, oh, everything's fine. It's not fucking fine. I mean, you don't have to admit to it, but get your shit in order. I talked about it last week. I think it was John that asked me about it. He was like, or a couple of weeks ago, what would you do to kind of settle the backstage issues? And I just said they have to address it, like have a talent meeting, or they kind of made certain steps already by promoting certain people and talent relations. Good. They had a talent meeting 2 weeks ago. Good. Okay. But what now? I mean, clearly didn't solve any of the issues. It should have been squashed before Punk was even out there. The fact that Punk was even complaining about that shit is a fucking problem. Obviously, he's to blame. But Tony Khan should have squandered that before they even went out to the fucking scrum. So that's why I say they're all at fault here. Specifically Tony Khan for not fucking cleaning this up earlier. He would rather be a friend of these people than be a boss. Be the authority figure, the actual authority figure in this company. And take action. Put his fucking foot down and tell these people to stop acting like children, Punk included, for how he said things and what he said on Sunday night after the pay-per-view went off the air. So there has to be action taken. You can't just let it blow over or just say kumbaya and apologize. No, I mean, he has to be taken out the show, probably strip him of the championship. It sucks from a booking standpoint. We kind of suffer as fans. I mean, at least the people who like Punk and the whole Punk MJF thing. For those that don't, you're probably in luck. I mean, it sucks. It's a terrible time for this to happen because they're headed into the fall. They need big ratings as they head into their next, talent or their rating renewal deal and their TV deal, renewal deal, whatever the fuck. This is an important time for this company, which is why MJF was brought back now and he wasn't brought back sooner, even after Danielson and Punk disappeared. They could have used MJF then, but they didn't rush it because they wanted them back for the fall specifically to keep ratings afloat, get them higher, whatever. And now MJF's back and Punk's probably gone. And the Elite. And say what you will about the Elite, but there are also big names too. There's a lot of people of the AEW audience that like the Elite and tune. I mean, Omega just came fucking back. So for him to be suspended, not saying that he shouldn't be, is also a big blow to the roster. Punk and Omega being gone at the same time is a big blow. Ideally, I don't want to see any of them get fired except for probably a Steele for his actions. I saw Cutler's name thrown in there, and Pat Buck and Christopher Daniels. From what I understand, they broke up the fight. I'm not really sure why they would be suspended. That seems a little strange to me. If they're trying to mediate and break it up, why the fuck would they be suspended unless they were throwing hands too? I'm not really sure how that works exactly. But yeah, ideally, you would suspend them. They come back. They work out their issues. Punk doesn't really seem like the type of person to work out his issues with people and move on. I mean, not to say he hasn't done that. Ideally, I mean, even Bret Hart and Shawn worked out their shit, and they still work together on TV, and it made for some great matches and great stories, and then we had the Montreal Screwjob, but it wasn't 100% Shawn's fault anyway. That was Vince. But yeah, I mean, they would put their shit aside and work together on TV, because that's where the real money is to be made here, is in an angle pitting, like, Punk and, like, fucking FDR against the Elite. Holy shit, that could main event a pay-per-view. That would be incredible. But first, they have to figure out their shit behind the scenes and work together and get over their problems like adults and talk it out, and either not talk with each other and just agree to be professional, and none of this walking out you. I mean, that goes for Punk too. I know he walked out years ago from WWE. I've never really held that against him. It was a health situation, among other things. I mean, for him, reportedly, I'm not saying this is true, but it came out a couple of weeks ago. Oh, Punk almost didn't show up to Dynamite because, the Adam Page comments from a few months ago. Or he didn't show up to Dynamite just recently because of what he said to Adam Page or whatever. I mean, to threaten to not show up to the show is pretty fucking dumb. I'm sorry. But the Elite also saying, reportedly, oh, we're going to walk out if this isn't handled. Shut the fuck up. I mean, that's fucking dumb too. Fucking figure it out like men and then move on. Like adults. Not this, no shame towards women, but work it out like adults and move the fuck on. I mean, that's really the key here. So, I don't know if they will. I don't see Punk getting over this. I don't see him working together with Omega and the Bucks. I mean, I think that'd be great from an in-ring standpoint. I mean, it is interesting when you think about, of all the people that Punk was asked about when he first came back, oh, who do you want to work with? I mean, I might be wrong, but he was saying Danielson and the Lucha Bros and Hobbs and Allen, and he never really mentioned Kenny Omega and the Bucks. So this he might go back a lot further than we think. Their second question, what was your favorite match of the weekend? Man, that's tough. The top 3 matches that stood out to me as being the best, and I thought all 3 shows, Worlds Collide, All Out, Clash of the Castle, all great shows. My top 3 favorite matches, in no particular order, were Gunther and Sheamus for the Intercontinental Championship, Roman and Drew for the Undisputed title at Clash, and Swerve in Our Glory versus the Acclaimed. I thought All Out had a lot of good matches. I thought Clash of the Castle was the better show overall, personally. All Out was still very good. I thought Punk and Moxley had a great match. I'm trying to think what other matches really stood out. There were some good matches, pretty good matches. It felt like there were less great matches than usual, but it was still like a very good show, a better show than Double or Nothing, interestingly. But I thought the tag team title match was outstanding. I really liked the Elite versus Page and the Dark Order as well. That was one of the better matches from All Out. But my favorite match of those 3 was probably Roman and Drew. Most people would say Acclaimed and Swerve, and I get it. The only thing that I would put Roman and Drew over the Acclaimed and Swerve was that it had more of a story. There was more at stake. I really wanted the Acclaimed to win the tag team titles, but that match only came together on a whim like a week and a half ago. Roman and Drew has been in the works now for a very long time. They were in Drew's home, turf, home continent of the UK, whatever. And, they really wanted them to win. They had that great surprise finish. A lot of people didn't like it. I get it. I thought the debut of Solo was perfectly executed. The match itself was excellent. The final few minutes were fantastic with some of those near falls, and I loved the match. So probably Roman and Drew, that's one of my favorite matches all year. The other 2 were excellent as well, and also in the running for 2 of my favorite matches all year as well. Next question from John Ritland at Reborn Again from the Twitter machine. Check out his YouTube show as well, Real Honesty with John Ritland. His first question was, so AEW sure is not looking good after this weekend, are they? Do you think this could affect their chances of getting another TV deal if they don't shape up? Great question. Yeah, it absolutely could. I mean, not that they're on thin ice or hot water or whatever, but, between this and the swearing on the show, which they were told to under so many in so many words just to tone it down, Ace Steel accidentally drops an F-bomb last week on Dynamite. I know that wasn't intentional and he kind of let it slip. He fined, apologized, whatever. That was before he bit fucking EVP the following Sunday. But yeah, between that and then the ratings not really being where they want them to be, they were over 1 million 2 weeks in a row. Tonight, I feel like the rating will definitely, if it's not over 1 million tonight, coming off the MJF return and all the drama and the bullshit, which is a big negative, but can be turned into a positive depending on how it ends. If they don't do over 1 million tonight, I'd be stunned, and they're fucked. But they've done 1 million the last couple of weeks. They need to trend upward and not just stay stagnant. As I've said many, many times, I've defended AEW in saying it's good they're at least staying where they are and not going downward like NXT has in the last couple of years. But they still should be doing higher ratings and growing their fan base beyond what they already have, and it's not just a niche 800,000 people a week. So we'll see. But yeah, no, this could absolutely hurt their chances of getting a new TV deal, which was already up in the air anyway, depending on how the next couple of months go and how Rampage does and all that other sort of shit. The backstage drama and dilemma does not help at all. And people getting fired, and if Punk's not there, that's a big, big blow to that company, and Tony Khan knows that, which is why I would probably just suspend him for a very long time to make sure he takes it seriously and doesn't pull this shit again. Letting him go would be a very bad business move, but you got to weigh the pros and cons. I mean, is what he did that bad to justify firing him? Arguably, yeah. But is it really that bad to keep him around and suspend him and whatever? That's what I would do. But if they fire him, I'm not going to complain about it, I would kind of understand. We don't also know all the details either, so it would really hurt their chances of getting a new TV deal if Punk wasn't there. I'm not saying the company is all Elite Punk Wrestling, but all CM Punk Wrestling, but he is a big part of it. I mean, he's been their biggest star in the last year, aside from MJF and Adam Page. That would never really felt like that guy. Kenny Omega is a big proponent, a big candidate as well to being one of the faces of AEW. But if he's not there, if he's suspended for a long period of time, then that hurts their chances as well. So, this is definitely not a positive as far as that goes. Unless the backstage bullshit just automatically creates the company. I mean, it does create more buzz around the product. There's no doubt about that. There is a positive in that sense. But if the ratings don't improve drastically because of the backstage drama turning a negative into a positive, then this is much more of a negative than a positive. So we'll see how it plays out. His second question, with rumors of the WWE draft not happening until after WrestleMania next year, what do you think the company can do to help liven up SmackDown? Just new faces. Roman not being around full time really hurts the show. And I know, John, you're not a fan of these people, so I totally get it. But, Karrion being on the show, I think helps because he is a fresh face, and they're at least attempting to push him towards the top of the card. Drew is there. We'll talk about Drew in a second. Your third question was about Drew. They have a big star in Drew. They brought back Hit Row to the tag team division. SmackDown reportedly, per PW Insider, is getting Braun Strowman as a big-time babyface. So I'm not the biggest Braun Strowman fan in the world, but fans seem to like him. And I know that was 1 week on Monday, but even before the pandemic, he was getting big reactions. So, I mean, you got to take that into account as well. So, as far as that goes, I think Braun helps to a certain extent being on SmackDown. Just better storyline. Sammy's a big help. Maybe they can bring some people over from Raw. Calling up maybe Legato to SmackDown instead of on Raw might help as well. More call-ups. Solos on SmackDown, so that helps. I don't think the show is bad. The SmackDown largely has been a pretty good show the last month. They just need more interesting storylines. The Ronda Rousey thing, I think personally, is developing well. Liv's title reign is fine. Gunther's been booked well as Intercontinental Champion. So the show has potential. They just need to build off what they already have and create more compelling storylines that will entice people to tune in more frequently. And also build more of an audience as well beyond what they already have. Like with AEW. His third question, did WWE essentially destroy any chance of Drew being seen as a top guy? The ending of the match, a clash, and the odd singing celebration reeked of SummerSlam 93 when they didn't have Luger beat Yokozuna. Now, the biggest difference between Luger and Drew was that Luger never won the WWE Championship. Drew has, and he probably will be world champion again. They're probably going to split the championships. I would be shocked if Drew never had another world title reign. People like Big E and Kofi, they were booked as such following their reigns, and it really sucks that they were. They were booked as mid-card acts. I know Big E was only around for like 2 months before he got hurt, in between his title reign and when he got hurt, but he was not presented as anyone important following his reign as WWE Champion. Like, him and Kofi, immediately as soon as those reigns were over, were right back to where they were previously in tag teams and in the mid-card. Drew, that has been far from the case. He's had mid-card matches in the last year with Baron Corbin and Jinder Mahal, but he's still been supremely over. He has not been moved into a tag team role. He hasn't even gone for the mid-card titles. He has been a world title contender. He has main evented pay-per-views. He's been chasing the world championship. He's been booked strong. He's won every single match he's had for like a year now, except for the match at Clash. So, no, Drew is still a top guy, and I'm honestly fine with him not beating Roman. The only negative to him losing was the fact that he did not get his moment. And the fact he did not get his moment really, really sucks because he deserved that. But if it's Cody getting the moment, then it'll be worthwhile. If it's not Cody and it's like someone like fucking Braun Strowman or someone like that, then I'll be extremely pissed it wasn't Drew. It has to be someone like Cody, if not Cody himself, because if it's not, then what they did with Drew is inexcusable. Just to have him lose it to some other Joe Schmo. I mean, even Kevin Owens has gotten his fair share of shots. I don't really want to see Kevin Owens be the one to beat Roman Reigns. I'd rather see him and Sami Zayn beat the Usos for the tag team titles. So, the Clash of the Castle finish definitely reeked of SummerSlam 93 with the whole singing thing. I didn't hate that. The only thing I would say is this. That should have happened off the air. That was really, it seemed to me to be a way, because it served no purpose as far as setting anything up. It really should have happened when they went off the air. And just close the show on the shot of Roman and Solo walking up the ramp, and the shot of a dejected Drew in the ring, kind of processing and stomaching the loss to Roman Reigns. That's probably what they should have done. But they didn't. They had the singing celebration, which was fucking random. So that should have been just an in-house thing to send the crowd home happy, not on the Peacock stream, because people were wondering, where is this going? Is someone turning on someone? Is someone coming out? Nope, nothing. So, yeah, that was a little weird. But the Drew stuff, no, I think he'll be fine. I don't know where the fuck he goes from here. I don't know if you turn him heel, or I wouldn't do that necessarily right now. But I don't know where he goes from here for the immediate future. But I think he'll be fine. I do think, especially when they split the titles again, that he will be champion again. I do not want to see him beat Roman in a rematch anytime soon. I mean, if they were going to have Drew beat Roman, it would have been on Sunday or Saturday at Clash. If they're not going to do it there, then he should not be beating Roman Reigns. I don't want to see a rematch at Extreme Rules, which they won't do anyway. Roman's not booked for that show. Or Survivor Series, or the fucking Rumble, or even WrestleMania. It should have been on Saturday if it was Drew. If it's not Drew, do it. Have it be Cody Rhodes. If he's back in time, and he should be, please have it be Cody Rhodes. At noob_n_co 1991, your thoughts on the whole AEW backstage drama over the weekend. I think this whole thing is an entire shoot. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to go off on your question, because originally when I wrote it, thought you said work. No, it's quite obviously a shoot, as you would say, or real or whatever. This is definitely not a fucking work. And if it gets turned into a work or acknowledged on the show tonight, you will have people say, oh, it was a storyline the entire time. No, it wasn't a fucking storyline. It might be turned into a storyline at a certain point. The latest report from Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated indicated that it won't be, ever. Although I think it should be. That would be amazing, as I alluded to earlier. If they really want to make big business and they care about this company, they'll fucking put their differences aside, put the boo-boo faces away, and make some money together. I don't think that's going to happen, especially with Punk, and I think that's a big bummer. But nonetheless, even if it's, whether it's not or whether it is turned into a shoot or rather a work at some point, incorporated into a storyline, this entire thing is 100% real. His comments about MJF during the press conference, I assume, were fake because he's feuding with the guy, so that makes sense. Him calling him a prick and whatever. And it's not even like he went off on the fact that MJF kind of walked off and wanted more money. I mean, I could see him going off on that, but he didn't. So I assume his comments about MJF were a work. Everything else from that press conference seemed like a shoot. His next question, your thoughts on the announcement from Mickie James on Impact Wrestling last week, if she loses, that she's going to retire, and do you see her getting inducted into the Hall of Fame next year in Hollywood? I was surprised she didn't go into the Hall of Fame this year. I know she's an Impact, but, I mean, they put Ric Flair in the Hall of Fame with the Four Horsemen when he was still in TNA, and that was 10 years ago. I know they actually, gave them Christian for Slammiversary that year, but, honestly, this is what I would do. I don't know if it's a fair trade or not. I know Bound for Glory is coming up soon, and I don't think it's happening because the pay-per-view's in a month. But what I would do is this. I would do the Hall of Fame at Bound for Glory this year and induct another person. I think last year was Awesome Kong. I would induct AJ Styles into the Hall of Fame. If I was Triple H WWE, Impact is not a threat, so they should continue working with Impact and being nice to them, whatever. AEW isn't, they're a threat, but they're also much, 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 much bigger than Impact, so I could see why they wouldn't want to work with them, whatever. I would give them AJ Styles for their Hall of Fame, because he should have been in the Hall of Fame a fucking decade ago, but then he left and they couldn't work it out. And get Mickie James in return, assuming Mickie's still in Impact by next year. If her contract's not, if she's not in Impact, it doesn't matter. You don't have to work with Impact, but that's what I would do. I would put AJ Styles in the Impact Hall of Fame, and then put Mickie James in the WWE Hall of Fame without either person leaving their respective company. As far as her current storyline with leaving if she loses, I don't think she's retiring. She's still very good, and she's 43. That sounds old, I guess. It's really not. She can wrestle for another fucking 10 years if she wanted to. She's still great, and she's coming off a great run in Impact right now, so I hope she's not actually retiring. It gives me Ric Flair vibes from 07-08, where the next match I lose, I'm done. It does add a lot of intrigue to her next couple matches. I'd be shocked if she... I assume her at least getting all the way to the, title match, where she might lose to Masha Slamovich. I could see that. That would be fine, but then it's like, does she actually retire, or does she just go to WWE, or I don't know. I don't think she's going back to WWE at this point. I think she's done there as far as a full-time performer goes, but I don't know. I don't want to see her retire, but I'm not exactly sure you have her beat Masha to win the championship either, so I guess we'll see. But I am intrigued to see where it goes, though. At Kyle Rochelle 19, I hope that Io Sky and Dakota Kai win the tag team titles next week. I can see why you're not a fan of Aaliyah. She just comes into the perfect time to pick up the win for her team. Will Io and Dakota win the championships like they should have from the beginning? I don't think they are, because if you were going to do that shit next week, then why the fuck wouldn't you put the belts on them in the first place? I know we talked for this last week, like, oh, maybe they did it for this reason. I mean, even Johnny Gargano, I mean, when he was, he won the title and then he lost it 2 months later. At least that was 2 months. I mean, to have Raquel and Aaliyah win the titles, only to have them lose it 2 weeks later is pretty fucking dumb. I mean, I would not have done that. The way I see it playing out, and I really want Dakota and Neo to win the belts. I would not complain. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But what's probably going to happen is Bianca costing them the championship, and that's going to lead to Bayley accepting her challenge to a match, and they had their match at Extreme Rules. Because why wouldn't they have just accepted the match and confirmed the match on Monday's Raw? They didn't, and that leads me to believe that Bianca is going to continue making life hell for Damage Control until Bayley agrees to face Bianca one-on-one, probably at Extreme Rules. So I don't see them winning. They should, but they probably won't. At Iwagu91, do you think for sure MJF will become AEW World Champion before this year is over? I mean, I don't know about this year as a fact. It might be next year. I mean, it's September. We only have 3 or 4 months left in the year. I don't think he absolutely will, but I think it'd be stupid if he didn't. Especially in light of all this elite bullshit with Punk, and Punk probably having to vacate the belt or just drop it or whatever. So, yeah, I think they'll probably have MJF win it, either at Grand Slam or Full Gear. That's my prediction. If he doesn't win it in the next couple months, I'd be surprised, but they could be waiting until Revolution or Double or Nothing. I wouldn't at this point, given the way the storyline played out on Sunday and everything else happening since then. I think MJF should win it soon, and he should probably win it at Grand Slam, if not before then. And next question from that Iwagu91. When Daniel Bryan was fired for choking Justin Roberts with his tie during the Nexus invasion, did you think he would come back as he did at SummerSlam? No, I didn't. I was very much surprised. I remember I was in the car, backseat, not driving, on my phone, updating the results from ProWrestling.net, their live coverage of SummerSlam. I never really watched the pay-per-views back then anyway, and usually I would just, watch the results on WWE.com or whatever. But I was away. I was actually going on vacation, I think to Virginia Beach or something. So I had to update the results on my phone, and I saw that Daniel Bryan came back, and I'm sitting in the back seat. It's like fucking midnight because we're driving late, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Daniel Bryan's back. By that point, prior to that point, it was announced he was coming to Northeast Wrestling, which is like the premier indie company over here in the Northeast, specifically here in Connecticut, MA, New York, whatever, Massachusetts. So I was like, fuck, that's so cool, because they announced him for a show in October, and now he's back in WWE, and he's still going to appear. That's awesome. So I got to meet Daniel Bryan. I have a picture of us. I fucking hate how I look in that picture. I was a loser of a 10th grader back. I look like an idiot with my fake Intercontinental Champion. I mean, I have a replica Intercontinental title belt now, but this one was one of those Jack-specific titles, I think. I might have it in the picture with me. But I met Daniel Bryan. I still have the picture, and he was United States champion at that point. Did not bring the belt with, or I think he did have the belt with him. He had it in his bag or something. I think he brought it with him, from wherever he was with WWE, which I thought was really fucking cool. So, I was shocked to see him back, and I was happy he returned because I got to meet him 2 months later. And I think it was one of his last indie dates, if not the last indie date he did before he went back to WWE full time. So that worked out amazingly well. At Iwagu91, do you think for sure... I already answered his question on that. His third question, your thoughts on Michael Cole's commentary in the post-Vince era of WWE. It's been great. He feels much more refreshed, and he was already much better anyway with Pat McAfee. The two are just a great duo and really bring the best out of each other. But especially since Vince left, it's been much more apparent. He's more relaxed. He's more excited to be doing his job, and he doesn't have a fucking 77-year-old man in his ear every week, so... I can imagine he's enjoying his job more, and it comes across that way on the show, which is great. At the Wrestle Guy, Sal from Twitter's first question: is there any way for WWE to get people fully behind Braun Strowman again like they were in 2017? It's cool that he's back, but I feel like that honeymoon phase will wear off quickly among the fans. So it depends what you're talking about here. Braun has always been over with, you hear these reactions even before the pandemic. He was beyond damaged goods by early 2020. He won the Universal title in front of no fans at WrestleMania 36. But even before that, I could not give, from a character standpoint, I could not have given two fucks about Braun by early 2020. I mean, the guy was just so creatively damaged. He was winning titles and shit, but it just wasn't really anything interesting. But the crowd still went nuts. He would do his spots, the crowd would go fucking nuts. These crowds love Braun Strowman. Maybe in Chicago he might get booed, but for the most part, he was really over with the WWE audience. He wouldn't fit well in AEW. I feel like the AEW audience would not give a fuck, but the WWE crowds love Braun Strowman. They go nuts for the guy. So, I don't think that's going to really wear off as far as the honeymoon phase among like people like you and me and whatever. I mean, are there many people among us that are excited to see him back anyway? I wasn't pumped. I'm interested to see what he does. I was not clamoring to see Braun Strowman back in WWE. I always said even when Vince was in charge, I would not be shocked to see him back because he just fits WWE. I don't think he can really go anywhere else. I know we tried the whole control your narrative shit. That's a fucking disaster. I know that's still going with EC3. They're trying it in the NWA now, which is just terrible. He fits WWE, and I'm happy to see him getting another chance. He's a much better big man worker than fucking Omos or Commander Aziz, which is good that he's back. From a booking standpoint, I know EC3 said in his press release about Braun going back and leaving Control Your Narrative, he has unfinished business. Yeah, maybe personally because he was let go unexpectedly, but like, what more is there for him to accomplish? He's main evented pay-per-views, he's been world champion, he was Intercontinental champion, he was tag team champion many times, Money in the Bank winner, greatest Royal Rumble winner. I think he won fucking Mixed Match Challenge, I feel like, or maybe he didn't, I don't know. He's won a lot of random titles over the course of his career. He's done it all. How much more can he really do, is my question. So, I'm not a big, thrilled that he's back. I think it's a good addition to the roster as a big man who can work. But as far as who he feuds with, we've seen him and Roman a million times. Him and Rollins, I don't really care to see. Him and Drew, I feel like we saw that a lot a few years ago, and they never really had great chemistry anyway. They had decent matches. AJ Styles, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who else can he really feud with? Kevin Owens, we've seen that a fucking million times. Sami Zayn, we've seen that a fucking million times. I don't know, man. I'm not really super pumped about him being back. So I feel like the honeymoon phase, I mean, yeah, amongst the WWE general audience maybe, but I don't even think that's going to wear off because people, that casual viewing audience fucking love Braun Strowman and they'll go nuts anytime he comes out. And I don't see that ever changing despite what they do with him. So I feel like he'll always get great reactions. How interesting he'll be going forward, that's the real question. I don't think his debut was handled perfectly either. I like the fact that he came off dominantly, but having that come at the expense of the tag team division, did not like that. His second question, at this point, I'd imagine there are no plans for Roman Reigns to drop the titles until WrestleMania. Do you think it's Cody Rhodes or bust at this point for the one who is to take it off of him? I don't know about Cody Rhodes or bust. I mean, to me, it has to be Cody Rhodes. I tweeted this last night. Could Braun Breaker work? Yes. Do I want to see Braun Breaker win over Cody? No, I don't think Braun's ready right now. Maybe WrestleMania 40. Do you really have Roman hold the belts until WrestleMania fucking 40, which is another year and a half away? The answer is no. It's already been long enough as it is. I would not do that personally. That's almost 4 years. I mean, if they made it interesting, then maybe just... I don't see that really working out. People are already tired of this shit anyway, so... I mean, especially if he's going to be part-time, too. So I would not do that personally. So to me, it would be Cody Rhodes. I know there's a lot of other people you can say. Kevin Owens. We've already seen him lose to Roman 3 times. I don't really want to see him lose to, I don't really want to see Kevin Owens be the one to beat Roman Reigns. I feel like there's a story to be told there with the tag team division or the tag team titles and not Roman and Kevin. Sammy, no. I've seen people say Jey Uso. I mean, the guy's not going to be main eventer for more than a couple months. I feel like that'd be a fucking waste, so no. Karrion, definitely not. AJ Styles, no at this point. Bobby, he's already a made man, so no. Randy Orton, definitely not. Riddle, definitely not. Who else did I suggest could face Roman? Obviously not Brock or Goldberg. No fucking thanks. John Cena, no. To me, it's Cody Rhodes or bust. But Braun Breaker, you can make a case for. I don't really want to see that personally, but you can make a case for him. His next question: do you think we can slowly see, we will slowly see more AEW stars wanting to leave if nothing is done about the recent events? It seems like this can only get more toxic for all involved. I can only see the morale of the roster going down. Maybe Cody Rhodes was onto something all along. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, this could absolutely lead to more AEW stars leaving for WWE. I think that was going to happen anyway, regardless of the recent drama, because Triple H being in charge absolutely makes it more appealing to go there. Vince McMahon proved that company was a fucking death trap if you went there. Cody Rhodes, notwithstanding, he was a different special case. A majority of that AEW roster going to WWE would have been fucking career suicide. But at this point, with Triple H in charge, I feel like you'll give people more of a chance, and there's a much bigger chance for a lot of these new people coming in that they will be utilized correctly. Not a guarantee, But especially the people like Adam Cole and Keith Lee and Malachi Black, if they were to go back, they would absolutely be booked well. I'd be shocked if they weren't. As far as the other homegrown AEW stars, Wardlow, I mean, he'd be a fucking fool to not consider going there. I know he's, loyal to AEW, but if this bullshit continues, I'm thinking, why wouldn't I go to WWE at this point? If they're offering the same amount of money for a bigger platform with less bullshit, then why the fuck wouldn't you want to go there when the morale is reportedly higher than it's been in a very long time over in WWE? If Cody Rhodes was onto something, he might have been. I feel like there were more issues than what we know about between him and the Elite. It was always rumored. He never confirmed it, and he's a smart businessman. He knows what he's doing. He's not going to say anything about that, but I do feel like that played a factor where he and the rest of the Elite, and even Tony Khan, did not see eye to eye anymore. So he took off, went to WWE, and it paid off. So congrats to him on that. Final few questions here from at E13A. Manuel, his first question was, Jake Roberts once claimed he told Vince McMahon that he'd just fire Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels when their feud was getting too intense. Do you think that would have worked out? So the link you sent me was from April, so I assume you're bringing this up in light of the Punk and Elite stuff. So the equivalent would be, if Punk and the Elite are too toxic, just get rid of all of them. That would be fucking stupid. To get rid of your two biggest stars, Punk's probably not going to WWE. Kenny Omega wouldn't have fucking harmed me. If Triple H is in charge and he got fired from AEW, he'd be a fool not... I mean, I guess he'd probably go back to New Japan, actually. I take that back. But, I mean, he would at least consider it, I'm sure. So, anyway. Yeah, I read the whole transcript of what you sent me. I feel like that would have been stupid. I mean, it depends how intense it's getting. If they're just bullshitting with each other, then who gives a fuck? Because it makes their feud more interesting, and it makes for bigger business. Just work it out and deal with it and do big business, which they did for a lot of their matches. If it's coming at the expense of the company, which it didn't, the bullshit with Shawn and Bret, I mean, it led to the Montreal Screwjob, but that wasn't solely due to that. It was also due to the fact that Bret Hart was leaving and that was a money thing. If it led to, it was a bad business decision, I'm not talking about Punk and the Elite. That's a different story. They should be suspended. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, if they're beefing with each other, who gives a fuck? Let them go. That's funny to me. That's just entertaining. If it's coming at the expense of the company where they're made to look unprofessional and it's giving the company a bad rap, then just suspend them. Or, I mean, I think jumping to conclusions by firing them would be the wrong call, unless they're out there using racial slurs and shit. If it's not at that point, then no. To get rid of them would have been fucking dumb, and I'm glad Vince McMahon did not take Jake Roberts' advice, because that would have done a great disservice to WWE. Getting rid of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. What a dumb thing to suggest. I get what he's getting at, but I mean, you got to consider the star power here. If that was Jake Roberts, yeah, get the fuck rid of him. I mean, who cares? But with Shawn and Bret, I mean, you can't just get rid of them just because they have issues with each other. If it gets more serious and they're causing more harm to other people on the roster, or it's embarrassing for the company on a grander scale, then yeah. But if it's not, and they were just doing what they were doing, which, I mean, they're not getting along like children, I get it. But if it was just that, then Vince McMahon would have been ridiculously dumb to let those two men go. His second question, did WWE bury the UK? Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, the UK wrestling scene, I feel like by the time they signed a lot of those UK people, I mean, it was at its hottest in 2017 when What Culture had their own promotion. That died in 2018. That to me was the end of the big resurgence of UK wrestling, was 2018. I mean, if they didn't kill UK wrestling, what really killed UK wrestling, to be honest, was the speaking out shit. Because a lot of those people were exposed to be complete fucking monsters as far as what they were doing with women. So, honestly, what really killed the UK wrestling was speaking out. WWE, though, did not help. They signed a lot of the talent. I mean, they're not being forced to. They agreed to, so that was their own doing. To a brand that no one really watched. And they just signed a lot of their big stars, Gunther being among them, and Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. And, I mean, they're still working indies, or they did over in the UK while they were in WWE. But, yeah, that was definitely a big factor as to why UK wrestling has cooled off a lot in the last couple of years. I don't know if it's making a resurgence or not, but I do know the two leading factors as to why UK wrestling really died, or lost a lot of its buzz anyway, was due to, WWE's NXT UK brand, for one, and speaking out. That was kind of the final nail in the coffin in 2020. And his last question, do you believe Triple H will really push someone to become the main champion in 3 to 6 months like he would do in NXT? Yes and no. You might be referencing my tweet from last night about Braun Breaker. He's a special case because they might look at him as Brock Lesnar. He is not Brock Lesnar, and I do think rushing the championship on him within a matter of months, It's cool they're pushing someone new. I don't think he's ready for that, though. I don't want them to Roman Reigns his ass. I feel like that'd be stupid. Other than him, no. With the women, maybe, because the women, I don't know. I feel like with the men, when you win the world championship too quickly, it can be more of a detriment than a help. With the women, the same thing, but you'll always be going for the same titles and you'll be feuding with the same women, so it does hurt to not have that chase. Like Paige didn't have the chase, but she was also champion like 2 or 3 times in that company before she retired as a Divas champion. So, she was Divas champion multiple times before retiring. So, with the men especially, it's definitely not a bright idea. Beyond Braun Breaker, though, I do not see them doing that. That's very rare that someone comes in and is a champion within 6 months. AJ Styles is the exception because, that was 9 months, but he was also established elsewhere. Beyond that, if it's someone from NXT and it's someone brand new, it's just not the smart booking call, and I don't think they would do that anyway. Vince might do that, but you compared it to NXT. Kevin Owens came in, was NXT champion within 2 months. Bobby Roode came in and was champion within 4 or 5 months. It's different with NXT. Triple H knew that these people had a short shelf life there because Vince would want them any day and would want to call them up immediately. So that's why he put the championship on people a lot quicker than you would see on the main roster, because there's not really much of a chase. There's a limited roster. There's the ceiling is kind of low as far as what you can do in NXT, especially back then when you didn't have the mid-card belts and shit. There were a lot of people that were there for a long time. Like Johnny did not win the championship until 3 or 4 years in, but he had a great character arc, and Vince definitely did not want Johnny or Ciampa on the main roster a few years ago. I know 2019 they kind of wanted them, but I'm glad they didn't work out because it worked out in the end anyway. But, I think it's definitely a case of, they just didn't have a lot of time to tell those long stories. You knew Vince McMahon would want Kevin Owens on the main roster soon if he was going to thrive the way that he did. So putting the championship on him as quickly as they did was a smart call, and it also got that reign in before he got called up within 6 months. So it ended up being for the best. But that's going to do it, guys, for a very loaded edition of #AskGSM for 458, episode 458, here today on September 7th. 2022. Thank you guys, as always, for the great questions. I appreciate it. Be sure to send in those questions to Twitter at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your comment or drop your question down below in the comment section. Fucking that up. Down below on this very video, and I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's try to calm down from the crazy week in wrestling. I'm sure it's only going to get more chaotic in the days to come. We'll have much more details on this, especially when the verdict drops. I would assume in the next 24 hours on WrestleRant Radio tomorrow. So tune in, check it out on all your favorite podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, Podbean, Google Podcast. Find the show with RJ and I discussing all the Punk stuff, Clash of the Castle, All Out, Dynamite Raw, and everything else in between. So have a great rest of your week, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.